having a great Conscious Life Expo, the 15th. How many of you have been here since the day one, back in early 2000? Yes? This is your 15th, your 14th, your 15th? How many have been to 10 or more? How many of you have heard David and Corey speak? Live. Yeah, well, you're in for a treat tonight, that's for sure. So we're really excited. This is our 15th Conscious Life Expo. And I have to tell you, I've been here since day one, and I've seen it grow and expand and just get better and better. And those of you who are with us live, and those of you who are with us out there in live stream land, we are so appreciative to each and every one of you. Because without you, we wouldn't be here. Without you, we wouldn't have the speakers that we have. And this, at this time more than ever, we need to come together. Hello. And I see so many faces that I recognize. It's really great. My name is Shima Moore, and it's my pleasure every year to welcome you and to be here and to connect with some new speakers and to welcome back people like David Wilcock. You know, I'm always looking through my files to see when did he first come here. Now, as far as I could see, it was 2008, but I could be wrong. He said 12 years. Okay, so then it was longer than that. It was probably 2005. My records didn't go back quite that far. But you know, when he first came to us, he came to us as the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. That was it. Brilliant, incredible, yes. But since that time, he has continued with his investigations to touch people not only live here, not only through his award-winning books, but on Gaia TV all over the world, 3 shows. And last year he came and he brought with him one of our special guests tonight, Corey Goode. And last year was Corey's debut, right? His very first public debut here at Conscious Life Expo. And I think if you go back, you'll see that there's quite a few speakers that have now become household names that started here at Conscious Life Expo. So give yourself a hand, because you are the ones that are bringing this consciousness out there. And we need to do that more than ever. So give yourself and your neighbor a big hand. Great. All right, well, so David is a triple best-selling author of Source Field, Synchronicity Key, and the Ascension Mysteries. He's a regular on the History Channel, Ancient Aliens, I knew he'd be back. Stretching it out a little bit. Ancient Aliens, the star of 3 Gaia TV shows, Cosmic Disclosure, Wisdom Teachings, and Disclosure. As I said last year, David, at Conscious Life Expo, we did the very first live public interview with intuitive, empathic Corey Goode, who was recruited, trained, and served in the My Labs from age 6 to 16, and then 20 years in various programs. Corey and David are the co-hosts of Gaia TV's Cosmic Disclosure, and tonight they're going to reveal groundbreaking disclosures on 5 different groups that are fighting for humanity's positive future and ascension. Hallelujah. All right, put your hands together and give a warm and wonderful Conscious Life Expo welcome to David Wilcock and Corey Goode.
All right, how's everybody feeling out there? Awesome. Okay, the clothes, I get it, all right? Cuban, tuxedo. But there's a method to this, okay? The thing is, The tuxedo comes off when it gets so hot in here from the body heat that we, as your entertainers and informers, are sweating. And in other years when I do this expo, you notice I'm always touching my nose and people are accusing me of doing cocaine. What I'm trying to tell you is that you think it's hot down there, I got 6 feet more of heat that goes to rise, right? And within 20 minutes, my nose is just going to be dumping off sweat. So I will try to remember not to touch my nose. But I don't expect that will work. Okay, so here's a really cool thing that I want to start with, because once we get rolling, this train is just going to keep on barreling down those tracks. What I wanted to start with, just because this might be something really cool for you, is that we, meaning Gaia, where Corey and I work in Boulder, we are hiring, okay? And we're not just hiring like 1 or 2 jobs. We're talking about a huge company that is in a massive growth expansion phase. This is like the equivalent of the California gold rush. Okay, there's gold in them there hills, and the hills are Boulder, Colorado. It's called the Flatiron Mountains. So what we got, if you look at this list, you can't really read it too well, because it's kind of far away, but I will read to you the next one here where you can actually see the positions. Just think about this for a moment. Any of these things. Now, it says there up at the top, Santa Monica B is the room where this is happening. And what that means is if you go down this hallway and then you see to the right of the stairwell going down, okay, there's a room in there. And I'm not kidding when I say that you can actually have a high-level meeting here. Some very important people who are central to the hiring process are here, and it might be a really cool thing for you. So check out what's there. Head of content, TV producer, assistant producer, news manager, news anchor, talent manager, video editor, social content producer, 3D animator, director of photography, seeking truth researcher. Well, that's like freaking everybody in the room. Okay? Please don't like overwhelm them. Sound engineer, writer, financial analyst. That's better somebody else than me. I'm not really good with that stuff. Head of sales, ambassador manager, marketing manager, graphic designer, copywriter, social media expert. That's probably, again, just about everybody in the room. SEO expert, that's search engine optimization, human resources director, data engineer, marketing data analyst, international program manager, customer service representative, fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, or German, or preferably all 3, but that's probably too much to ask, and executive assistant. So, like, it's huge. And this is something in which, if you get hired, you do end up working in Boulder. But I've been spending a lot of time in Boulder, and it's kind of like a little Los Angeles. It's got its own really cool vibe. So that is something, if you've ever thought about it, if you've ever wanted to work with us and be involved in this cool team, there's a golden opportunity, the likes of which may never again happen like it is this weekend. So that's a very cool thing coming up. Okay. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to bring Corey in, and we're going to start a dialogue on some of these topics. This is, and I can promise you this is the most visually robust talk that we have ever given. It's going to be superseded in visual robustness. But you like that? Robustness. I didn't joke about the other one.
You just did. He has to work it into every presentation.
It's part of the game. If somebody tells me I can't do something, then probably I will. You know, that's just how it works.
Well, don't be quiet.
Ooh. I think people would get mad if I was quiet. You know, they paid for this. Okay, by the way, folks, just so that you understand the logistics of what's going on, we have a gigantic line outside the room of people still trying to get in. So we are going to probably end up having a standing room only situation. So please don't be offended by this. This is just what we call a happy problem. Right? When you sell this many tickets, that shows that you are listening and you are supportive, and I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. We are winning this war. This cannot be lied about. Nobody can say this is a fake crowd. This is not fake news. This is real. Okay, for whatever reason, y'all are crazy enough to want to come in here and listen to this for 2 hours. So we're going to give you a good show. Well, I'm not crazy. What are you saying, David? Fuck you, David. Hey, look. If people think that you're crazy, I had a Shinto acupuncturist friend who told me, you are becoming more normal. Okay? So we have a more normal audience here. Let's just phrase it that way. We'll keep it smooth. So how the heck did I end up, after being online for 20 years doing all this stuff, how did I end up crossing paths with somebody like Corey Goode? Because it's almost like a foreign language. One of the problems that we have is people who have not really been educated about the big picture of UFOs. They watch something like Cosmic Disclosure, they're like, who the heck is this dude? Because you notice when Corey's talking, he's like totally deadpan. Right? He's not in it he's not like mugging for the camera. He's not wanting to look good. He's out there, and we have both been through incredible hardships to do what we're doing. And we are not giving up. Not even after we did our last taping, and Corey ends up in the frickin' emergency room. I don't know if you heard about this, but I put the whole thing out on my Facebook page, and you guys prayed for him, and that's probably why he's alive right now.
Thank you.
I'm really not kidding. It's a whole other talk I don't have time to go into today, but suffice it to say, there's a guy named Dr. Daniel Benor, and he analyzed hundreds and hundreds of different studies of healing done scientifically in laboratory conditions. 64% of the healing studies of psychic healing showed a profound effect. So what the lamestream is going to do is they're going to show you one of the 36% that didn't work, and they say, oh, see, healing has been scientifically disproven. But we know that it works, and I don't use that power very often, but in a case like that, I absolutely said, this is it. If there was ever a time to marshal the crowdfunding of healing, okay, we did it, and he's still with us. Thank God. I got broken into a very strange new reality in 1993 when a good friend of mine in college comes in all white-faced and says, dude, aliens are real. And I'm like laughing. And he wanted me to sit down, but I could tell pretty quickly he's very serious. Turns out he had a 2-hour private briefing with his college physics professor who had worked for NASA throughout the 1970s. And in the higher echelons of NASA, it was considered common knowledge that extraterrestrials had visited Earth, that they had landed here, that they had crashed their ships, and the ships had been back-engineered into useful technology. And he said, and this was in 1993, within 20 years, the technology that you are going to see will blow your mind, and it will come out in the open. And now we take for granted that we got these little buddies here, okay, in which this is like the whole frickin' desktop tower computer in one little thing. We kind of taken this for granted. Well, that's about the 20-year time frame is 2013. Sure enough, all this technology that nobody had anticipated ends up emerging. And that was pretty fantastic in and of itself, of fulfilled prophecy. After he told me this data, which included a lot of specifics, you probably all heard it before, about how there were three types, all this NASA guy knew was there were 3 types of beings, some of which look like grays, some of which look just like humans, but they're definitely not born on Earth. And they might have little differences, like their irises are purple, and they have like a diamond shape instead of a round iris, or subtle little things like ridges on the roof of their mouth instead of a flat palate like we have. You get enough specifics like that, including propulsion systems and all this weird stuff, and you say, you know what, this guy is telling the truth. Then a few years later, out comes Colonel Philip Corso, who literally said exactly the same thing that I was told in the book The Day After Roswell, about parts that had been taken out of UFOs and back-engineered into, and I will list some for you, computer chips, fiber optic cables, light-emitting diodes, LED lights. We didn't have that before. Kevlar, like for the bulletproof vest. Velcro, believe it or not. Infrared night vision. And then there's other technologies that we don't get to hear about, like anti-gravity. So even back in 1993, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. If our government, if you want to call it that, got these things and used them and could back engineer them, then why wouldn't they have taken off outside of Earth's atmosphere? Why wouldn't they have gone around our solar system? And then why wouldn't they want to land on some of these other places and figure out what was there? So very early along in my work, I was lucky enough to find the work of Richard C. Hoagland, who got into Mars. And this was the way the book looked when I first got it, back in, again, 1993. And it freaking blew me away because I had heard from my buddy that he had done a presentation at the United Nations talking about the space on Mars that he's pointing to right here. That this is not just some trick of light and shadow, but in fact, as you see here, you have this artificial-looking face. It's clearly human-like with a headdress around it, next to what very obviously looks like a city of pyramids. And let me tilt this so you can see that, because I can look at the other one. Corey, this is new for him too, by the way. We just kind of, we do this, we throw it together, and we make it great. We're both so busy we don't have time to plan these things out too far. So you notice there's some very, very pyramid-like things here, but let's take a look at kind of a side angle now. You see the face up at the top right, the pyramids down there on the left, and look down there on the right. That one down there is a 5-sided pyramid called the D&M. And this is what it looks like from overhead. Do you think that's some kind of just random crater or mountain? No, come on. And also what we see is that the proportions of the human, the Vitruvian man, like Leonardo da Vinci drew, you spread your arms and legs out, that's what it looks like it's a human being. Now this thing is estimated to be 1.5 miles wide based on the size of the Mars orbiter frames. 1.5 miles wide and probably over 1/2 mile tall. You could fit millions of people inside this structure alone. And then the other very strange thing, if you look at it, let's see where, I can probably look at it better here. You'll notice that at the top left, there is this river of what looks like something ran off of it. And it appears that this thing was actually blown up from the inside, and that's the melt-off of all the heated debris that was inside. There was a war. These people got wiped out. So Hoagland also was really into this stuff about alignments, and he said there was all these alignments between the objects on Mars that we found. And I got so excited about this that it began a research binge. In his book, he also described some very strange stuff that they found on the moon, beginning with the first mission around the moon that took pictures, which was not America. It was the Russians in 1965. Now look at this stuff. This is before it all got classified. Now, you're not going to see very much here, so I'm going to zoom in. What we're looking at right now is a photo of the moon. Now, that thing on the bottom left, that circle, is not what we're looking at. That is just some instrument that got in the way of the shot. You look down at the bottom right corner of this photo. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit now. You can't really see it, so I'm going to do it again even closer. There is a frickin' glass dome down there. You see that on the bottom right? On the limb of the moon? It's a frickin' dome of glass. What the heck is that thing doing down there? That's not supposed to be there. And if you look carefully, you can
used to be a dome.
Well, yeah, it got blown up. No, he's right. And this is all going to be part of our story. So this is a smashed up dome. And this is the physical evidence, okay? This is 1965, before the government was classifying what they saw. There it is. And it looks like a pyramid. You notice that there's 2 sides that slope up to the same size, and then it's got a flat top just like the ones in Mesoamerica. Very shortly, just a few frames after, the moon rotates a little bit more. That one that we saw on the bottom right is now out of view because it's now covered by more of the moon's size. And then this little guy shows up in the middle on the right. Look at that. You see it over there? Let's take a closer look now. Oh my God. Now this thing is estimated to be miles tall. And you actually have the skeptics trying to say, oh yeah, this is just some glitch in the film. 2 glitches in a row? one that looks like a pyramid of glass, one that looks like a tower. You're telling me that's a glitch? How could this thing be sticking miles above the surface? Now, if these were the only examples, that would be fine, but then we have this very, very strange thing Hoagland found. Frame 4822, a lot of times you ask for it, you get totally nothing. It just looks black, but then he kept asking for it, and it turns out that one of the times that they sent in a request for it, they got this guy. It doesn't look like a whole lot, and one of the things that he pointed out here was this weird little area in which you see what appears to be a square clearing right here. And you can see the sides of the square. You also see what kind of look like pyramids, like a row of pyramids here. Okay, that's all fine and good. Some people want to believe that, some people don't. But when you go over here, NASA typically crops it out right about here. But when he got the original, when whoever was supposed to hide things away in drawer 4822 forgot about not giving them the original, because they got 12 different copies of this thing, some of it didn't have this cropped out over here, and this is what they saw on the surface of the moon. It's in the original. Lots of people have seen the original. This is not fake. Do you think that looks like a geological formation? Absolutely not. This is a base. It's very likely an active base. This was taken during the Apollo missions, so we're looking at like 1969. And it clearly looks as if you have a series of rooms that are all interconnected at right angles and a tower in the middle that sticks up a little more. And it looks like it's made out of glass-like material. There could be lots of people living in there. Then we have this very strange thing. This is an example of photos that the engineer Ken Johnston was told to destroy his original copies of Apollo photographs, which he was storing. At one point, they were stored in a broken-down, vagrant McDonald's, believe it or not. And it was no longer being used, and so there was all these boxes of NASA images of the moon, and they told him, burn them, destroy them. And he didn't, thank God. Now, we've had Donna Tietz for the Disclosure Project 2001. I was there. She then got the name Donna Hare, saying that NASA, her testimony was that NASA airbrushes real stuff out of these photographs. This is the official NASA image of this frame right here, and you notice down here where the arrow is, it's different. If you go to the Ken Johnston version over here, there's a frickin' dome on the surface of the moon, which they deleted. So please, when your friends are telling you, this is a live stream, so you guys can get this, and you can have this at home. You can watch it as many times as you want. You can show people the proof. Something is going on here. There's stuff on the moon that isn't supposed to be there. And then this one really blew me away. This is when Richard Hoagland and I ended up co-authoring together. This is the original NASA AS-14 669301. And it doesn't look like much, although there's this little tiny fleck of blue you can't really see. But when you image enhance it, you see all this stuff that looks like glass. And then another frame taken just a few steps away is 669279. Look at this. Just with a little bit of Photoshop, all you got to do is use the curves filter, which just pulls out more of what's in the image. And all of a sudden you see glass beams on a massive scale. I mean, this thing, whatever they posed in front of, it is frickin' enormous. Okay, that is an enormous, enormous object. Here's another example where the sun was setting and light catches off of some of these glass ruins. And you see shards poking up off the surface of the moon. It's totally amazing. Now, Corey has also talked about the idea that a lot of ships were left behind on the moon's surface. And this is one that I didn't put in my book. For whatever reason, I could only use so many images. But this is AS-15, P9625, and 9630. Now, look at this. What we're seeing here is a crater that has this very strange object in it. And when we do these two images together, and then we basically sharpen it using known filters, look at what happens. It's called a composite. Oh my gosh. Now, Corey, does this look like anything that you've ever seen? Do you think this one is a real example?
It very well could be. There are a number of crashed vessels that are on the moon that were from antiquity. There was a major treaty signed, and in that treaty, they left all of the debris from the big battle that they had as a reminder or a testament for other generations, so that they wouldn't have such a terrible war again.
So to me, this is an example, and this is another one that's really, really classic. It's called the Blair Cuspids. I talk about it in the book. This is one of the only surviving images of it from Argosy magazine by Ivan T. Sanderson. And if you can't see it very well, let's do this next one. Okay, what you're seeing here is literally an object that is many stories tall, at least 13 stories tall, obelisk on the surface of the moon with others around it. And this was formally being analyzed scientifically as of about 1968, and then once again the clamp goes down. So Corey, do you think that they were deliberately allowing some stuff like this out in case they might disclose earlier than they ended up doing? Is that part of what was going on here?
Yes, they have to seed the consciousness. That's the way their magic works. They will put out information and then redact it or ridicule it later, but the seed is planted. So yes, it's to set things up. That they have things planned out hundreds of years, and it's just a part of their limited disclosure.
All right, the jacket is off. This is getting real, folks. We've gone from Tux to Cuba. Okay. Now, this was a Russian depiction of a more side-angle view of what they think was down there. And sure enough, it looks like a city of obelisks. And interestingly enough, a comic book that comes out 2 years after this breaks into the news called UFO Flying Saucers issue number 2 actually did a comic treatment of this. Here's the cover of the magazine, and Gold Key Comics, they're the ones that used to do the Donald Duck. My father used to take me to the newsstand every Sunday. I'd buy these Gold Key Comics all the time.
Our graphic novel's going to look way better than that.
Okay, fair enough. This is a historical document, though, bro. You got to appreciate that. And sure enough, what we see here is UFOs on the moon. And then, sure enough, we have this guy here, and he says, my colleagues and I believe that they may be some kind of obelisk, completely different from anything else on the moon's surface. Now, I don't know if you can see what I can see from here, but you look at this dude's eyes for a minute. Those are the eyes of a happy man. That's all I'm going to say, folks. They are blood red.
Keeping the secret is
you can
just too much.
extrapolate. You can extrapolate from that what you like. He looks like he is baked as a cake. Okay, I'm going to make it easy for you. It wasn't legal back then either. But there's the obelisks in 1970 comic book. Freaking crazy. And then they fictionalize a little bit, and they have one of these obelisks which creates some kind of gravitational field around itself. But Corey, look at this. All this freaking ancient space junk and bodies captured by the gravitational field of the obelisk. In 1970, what do you think they might be telling us there?
They're prepping us for either ancient builder race or some of the groups that came afterwards that built structures.
Right. And the idea being that there's a lot of junk left behind on the moon, right?
Oh yeah, it's covered in debris.
So that's a very interesting thing. There's all this stuff going on, including back in 1958. Now remember, the NASA frame of that face that I showed you, that didn't show up until 1976. This is 1958. What the heck is this? Come on. How do you possibly maintain a skeptical opinion in the face of evidence like this? A 1958 comic that is called The Face on Mars, in which the actual shape and structure of the face itself, other than the fact that it's tilted up straight instead of lying flat, it looks freaking identical almost to the actual face on Mars. And then the whole story is, I talk about this in Ascension Mysteries, my new book. It's all about this ancient race that warred and blew up their planet. They talk about the asteroid belt being the remnants of this exploded planet. So I'm doing all this research. Hoagland's book totally blew my mind. I'm seeing there's ruins on the moon, there's ruins on Mars. Somebody's been out in our solar system for a long time. Then in 1996, I read this Law of One material, which the first book of which is called the Ra material, because Ra is the name of the source. It claims to be a positive entity that helped the Atlanteans and the Egyptians way back when, and their message got distorted and confused, and they had to withdraw. Then they come back, and they were able to get through people that were actually doing intuitive channeling and get messages through. Now, in general, I don't really endorse channeling at all. I think it's kind of really taken a big downturn. But you read this stuff, it's like diving into some frickin' scientific manual that has all this jargon and all this very interesting stuff going on. And Corey, we're about to get into the space program, but when you were in the program, did they know about this?
Yes, absolutely. The rank and file were told that it was Luciferian and evil to stay away from it.
Right.
But the brass were encouraged to read it and a number of other books.
So the thing that blew my mind is that there was so much stuff in this Law of One that matched up with the research I had gotten out of 3 years of reading probably 300 books. And it's a terrible shame because I left my computer behind when I moved from New York in the house that I'd been staying in, and I had a complete list of every book I'd read in college, and it was about 300. And I lost that file, which drives me crazy. Anyway, here's the cosmology, because it's not just all this weird stuff about ETs, it's a philosophy that they're teaching in this material, and it's very strange. It says that the only thing in the universe that really exists is identity, consciousness. Meaning there's only one identity, there's only one consciousness in the universe. Then, it basically says this cosmic consciousness became lonely or bored, something like that, and it decided to experience multiplicity. But the trick is it can't just sit there like somebody crazy in the corner with two puppets on his hands and ha 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 ha, oh yeah, yeah. It had to actually give each piece free will to be able to define its own curriculum. And so that law of free will becomes central to the whole discussion. The law of free will. Free will must be preserved for anybody in the universe, which means if you violate free will, you get karma. The universe then separated into these 7 major layers that we could think of like the colors of the rainbow or the sounds in the white keys in the piano called the diatonic or solfeggio scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And each of these colors represents a dimension, if you will. So there's 7 major dimensions, and they all correspond with your 7 chakras in the body, these energy centers moving from the root chakra up to the crown. So they say these are actual planes of existence, and weirdly enough, they say you have bodies in each density. So even though we're human here, you're also multidimensional. You already have a 4th dimensional, 5th dimensional, 6th dimensional, and 7th dimensional body, and you are also the one creator at the same time. And all those things are happening at once because actually there is no time. We're going to get to this in a moment, but Corey, how does the law of one cosmology, as we're saying it so far, jibe with what you've already heard in person from these beings we're about to meet, the Blue Avians?
It falls in line perfectly.
So the densities, they've actually described where some beings came from one density, some from another, things like this.
Right. They all started from source and returning to source through a process, and these densities are consciousness. They're not different dimensions outside of where we are now.
And they all coexist.
Right. A 4th density being we could interact with just as much as we can a 2nd density being.
Right. And let me point one thing out here really quick, which is that I was confused on this at first because, okay, well, we're 3rd density, but then there's 1st and 2nd. And they explain that these are 3-dimensional things. Like you have a 1st density could be earth, air, fire, and water. One of those 4 elements. 2nd density is where those raw materials start to appear as biological life. Everything from single-celled organisms, plants, animals, all the way up to complex animal, birds, things like this. Everything except humans is where you get individuation, self-consciousness. That's 3rd density. Now, before these densities ever went any farther than just being essentially coexisting layers in the cosmos, the first great central sun is formed, the first star. That star buds off other stars. Those make more and more and more, and they eventually flower into galaxies. Then galaxies bud off new galaxies. The stars in those galaxies, in turn, are spitting out planets. And then the planets have water, and it's actually far more common than you realize, intelligent life. As a result, we have countless numbers of intelligent civilizations scattered throughout our universe. So this is, we have this idea, oh, we're God's chosen, we're the only ones. That's a narcissistic view. But it's very important. Some people think that if there's other civilizations out there, that this one could just get tossed by the side, not get paid attention to. Oh yeah, we'll let that one go. We'll let that planet get wiped out. But what they tell us is that they're very interested in making sure that every part of creation is protected and nurtured and supported. And so we're about to see how much they came in to help us here. Just very quickly, this scientific study from Pedigura and other scientists came out October 2013, the prevalence of Earth-sized planets orbiting sun-like stars. This is an official NASA study. And what it says here, you can read it down here, 22% of sun-like stars harbor Earth-sized planets orbiting in their habitable zones, and the nearest may be only 12 light years away. And when you actually get in there, the statistics of what this thing tells us is totally astonishing. We're just going to go through this quickly. I've used this now like 5 years in a row, ever since it came out, or 4 years, I guess. At least 1% of all stars in the universe have a habitable, watery planet like ours. That's 100 billion Earths. It's crazy. There's 100 Earth-like planets for every grain of sand on Earth. Try to imagine that one. There's one guy in the back, he's on 3 hits of acid. And he knows exactly, oh, there he is. And he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He gets that. Oh, dude. 100 Earths. I'm going to find one with 100 on it right here. Let it flow through my fingers, bro. Assume... Corey's not laughing. That's bad, okay? I probably need to let him talk a little bit.
I've heard all of this so many times.
We assume only 1% of these planets that are watery have life on them. That means every grain of sand on Earth, this is from that study, represents a planet with actual life. And it's probably a lot more than that. So, it gets even better. Let's just blast through this. If 1% of those planets with life has intelligence like we see on Earth, which is actually an underestimate, that would be 10 quadrillion intelligent civilizations in the universe. It's unthinkable, almost. You apply that to our galaxy, and they estimate we have 1 billion Earths, which, by the way, this is an old study. They've now jacked it up to 40 billion Earths just in our galaxy. 40 billion. 100,000 intelligent civilizations, and the Law of One estimates there's about 100 million intelligent civilizations just in our galaxy. So this is a gigantic number. And the Law of One also says the vast majority of ETs are benevolent. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, it seems like the ones that cause trouble like to kick it around.
They're trolling here, aren't they?
Yeah, they kick it around Earth a lot.
This is like a little oasis for the negative because it can still live here. It's been kicked out, apparently. So, back then, I didn't know that somebody would come forward with information that verified this, but Ra explained that they started out on Venus 2.6 billion years ago. And they said they had a strong affinity for the pyramid shape, meaning that they built it all over the place. So, Corey, that's what we're going to call the show, right? We've talked about this. The show is called So Corey. We're not going to call it Cosmic Disclosure anymore.
This is kind of a similar format.
So Corey. Isn't it interesting that it says that they were building pyramids all over the place 2.6 billion years ago in the Law of One?
Very much so, since one of the things they've discovered in Antarctica is a number of super large pyramids that date back about 1.8 billion years.
And you also dropped a bombshell on me when I was working on Ascension Mysteries, which is not only had I heard from Richard Hoagland's top insider, who we're calling, I want to make sure I say the right name, we call him Bruce. We mind if we call him Bruce? Yes, we call him Bruce. If you've ever seen Monty Python, you'll get that, but not one person laughed. He's freaking dying on stage. Oh my God. He told me that we're in a cosmic junkyard. And what he meant by that is that there are these pyramids and obelisks that look like they're made out of some kind of crystal on moons and planets all over the place in our solar system. But he was told that that's as far as it goes. We haven't explored past the boundaries of our solar system, because at that level, what we're calling the Military-Industrial Complex Space Program, or the MICSSP, that's all they know. But then, Corey, you told me that there's more pyramids and obelisks of crystal out there than just in our solar system. How widespread is this thing?
It is in the approximately 52 closest stars in what is called the, I keep using the NASA term, the local stellar
Local
neighborhood.
cluster.
The local star cluster is what they call it. But yeah, it's approximately 52 stars, and we're right smack dab in the middle of them. And because of our location and the dynamics of our location in the cosmic web, it is a supergate, a very coveted supergate that allows these beings that do a lot of barter and trading to travel all across our galaxy and into other galaxies.
And in the Ascension Mysteries book, I didn't have a slide in here for that. I didn't know he was going to say that, but I actually researched that claim, which he just tossed out on the phone. And sure enough, there is a vertical, what they call plasma chimney, right next to our sun that goes straight up out of our galaxy and off into the cosmos. Totally validating what he was saying. Because, Corey, the stargates, when you actually get a stargate, you're going to see some plasma around it, right?
Yeah, well, normally what you see is the kind of the effect you see on the road, the mirage effect when it's hot outside. And it's not like on Stargate where it's a flat thing that you just walk through. It is a sphere, and you can enter in it from all directions. They'll have one of those opened up, and there will be personnel with their equipment all heading. It looks like they're all about to run into each other in the middle, but they disappear and go in. And it also, I've seen large like metal beams that they're transporting for construction. They'll open the portal in the middle of it, and the beam will fold up and then go in like spaghetti almost.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I always hear new things. That's what's so amazing, is when you have a real insider, like the fake ones on the internet, they keep recycling their story. When you get a real insider, you toss them a totally random question, and you get this amazing answer you never expected. I'd never heard that before. It's really cool. So what is the name that the people on the inside give for these the group that made these ruins? What do they call it?
They're referred to as the ancient builder race. And we've gone and excavated a lot of the ruins. And the craziest thing is they found areas where there used to be writing or glyphs of some sort, but someone had come in and sanded them or removed them, just like the kings would do. The kings would come in, and after they won, they would erase the history of the prior king. Something very similar had been done by the beings that came here long after. So it's been a big mystery, and only recently have they found working ancient builder race ruins, or they're not ruins, technology that they've been able to learn a lot more about the ancient builders.
Folks next door sound like they're having more fun than we are. But I think we got a bigger crowd. Let's give them some noise. Give them some noise. Yeah! All right. I think we win. So they said that they originated on Venus. Venus, which is now this weird hot planet. But one of the amazing things that happened to Corey with one of these 5 alliance groups was that he was brought. You tell the story. You were brought to Venus, and what happened?
I was brought to Venus, and I was shown a working ancient builder race tower, pyramid-like tower, most likely what the ones on the moon may have looked like. And there was a being there called the Sentinel, who apparently had been put there by the ancient builder race a long time ago. He wasn't AI, but he seemed to. He wasn't. There was something just not normal about him, which may sound weird because that's not normal. But I actually got to see.
We're all friends here.
I actually got to see the ancient builder technology operate, and I was given a download that, to this point, I haven't been able to access. So, I mean, it's incredible technology, extremely ancient, and heavily coveted by not only the military-industrial complex, but just about every non-terrestrial race that is still visiting us.
And so, how amazing is it that we have this Law of One material that gives us this incredible model of a civilization that originated on Venus 2.6 billion years ago and built pyramids all over the place, and then the real-world data from people that have actually gotten these crash disks and gone out into the solar system and checked things out totally lines up with what the Law of One said. And it gets stranger because the Law of One says that everything originated from one infinite consciousness that started it all, and now we have scientific proof of that. And this is another thing I'm just going to say quickly, because probably most of you are aware of this, but a few of you are not. It's worth mentioning. This came out in 2013 in September, where these guys, Nima Arkani Hamed and Yaroslav Trunka from Caltech, and those are tongue twisters, I practiced that. They have figured out that all matter in the universe, all space and all time is a manifestation of a single object. That's very different than what we normally think. It's not the Big Bang at all. It's a totally new way of looking at the universe. This thing they call the amplituhedron. What is the amplituhedron? It is a geometric form, which this, you don't really see it too well, but this diagram, well, no, first of all, let's say what it is. They're telling us that all of space and time can be scientifically derived from this one geometry. In other words, there is no space, there is no time. It's all happening now in one point, and anywhere you zoom down in the cosmos, you're going to see ultimately this one form. And the craziest part about this is the geometry. This is the diagram that he originally made. This is the one that I made for the book, so you can really see it's all tetrahedrons. It's sacred geometry. And the big takeaway for me, this is the original form that Penrose was working on in the 1970s. He couldn't quite solve it, but he got fairly close. He was the guy working with Hawking on the Big Bang model in black holes. He had his own model. This thing, as it turns out, is just 1/4 of your sacred geometry Merkaba, which Richard Hoagland was seeing all over the place on the surface of Mars in the alignment between the objects on Mars. So sure enough, as I phase shift between the two, you can see this is God, if you will. This is the seed of all creation, the creator, the universe. And it's just one form in this geometric pattern. So these guys are saying that's all there actually is, and the Tibetans were saying the same thing. This is their image of the creation. This is their image of the original and the only thing that really exists. Notice any similarities? Yeah, this is called the Vajrarahi Mandala. It's a 2D diagram of the same thing, even with the geometry inside. So what's going on here, my opinion is that the Tibetans were contacted by extraterrestrials who gave them accurate scientific knowledge that we only now are starting to understand. Is that something that, to your knowledge, is happening often, that ancient cultures were being given pieces of data like this that were actually correct, even though we might not know it yet?
Yes, often it's given to them telepathically, but back before they had a treaty, they were appearing to people face to face, staying amongst us for a long period of time, giving us this type of information.
And, of course, the Star of David fits this pattern. The Masonic square and compass fits the pattern. And that originally I do not think was negative, though eventually Freemasonry was co-opted to be used as secrecy for very dark groups. All of this stuff apparently started out as positive, and the idea also being that we have Merkabas around our physical bodies. We are a Merkaba. We have that sacred geometry in our soul as well. So all of this stuff in the Law of One led me to understand that if what they were saying was true, there's all these ET groups out there, and there's much more going on around the Earth with extraterrestrials than we think. Now, in the Law of One, they call a certain group the Orion Confederation. Those are the villains. But unfortunately, Don Elkins never asked, what do they look like? And what we found out from Corey, this was one of the hardest things for me to accept, actually, when I started to talk to him, because nobody wants to talk about the Draco, as that book is titled, Don't Mention the Reptilians. So, you remember back when we first started to talk about this, and I was like, wait a minute, you're saying it's like a freaking dinosaur head stuck on a human body? And I was having a hard time with that.
Yeah, and also this Orion group or this Draco Confederation is made up more than just the Draco.
Right.
Yeah.
But sure enough, we had this movie come out, Jupiter Ascending, February 6, 2015, and this is when Corey had come over to visit me for the first time. We go watch the movie together.
Actually, we went to the Conscious Life Expo.
That's right.
And then we left
And we
went
caught
to
the
go see
movie.
that,
Yeah, that's what happened. So it was right after I'd given a big talk, and then he was literally like flexing in his seat and freaking out.
I was not.
No, you did.
I mean, you over animate everything.
You were like that. Here you got these tall reptilians in the movie that are advising a weird human-like group of people who are very dark because they're feeding off of others to stay young. They're literally like creating this bath out of, harvested human beings that they soak in and then they get young again. And it's all being directed by these Draco people. And then you got these weird scenes like you see here. I mean, yes, it does kind of look like it's projected on a garbage bag. I apologize for that. But there's the reptilian down there with the big tail. They don't actually have tails. But there's some pretty interesting... I can barely even see that from where I am. Can you see that at all? Okay. It's a very toothy, nasty-looking creature. And here's another example of it where he's like really getting in somebody's face. So this was a very strange thing, and it seems to be revealing some stuff that they want us to know in their own way, and they do it through fiction. And this was our original mock-up of the white Draco. I didn't actually have time to get the real image that we finally fixed, but this is what they look like at the highest royal level, 14 feet tall. And then we have a subservient race that's known as the Reptoids, and they actually look like this. Now, Corey, this is another thing that fascinated me. A lot of people just automatically assume, oh yeah, reptilians are green. They're all green. Has that been your experience?
No, quite a bit of brown, a little bit of red in the scales. But, and they have patterns of scales, not like freckles or something, but patterns that distinguish them.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular one, a lot of people that have encountered it have described it as a gray. And a lot of times people will describe a reptilian type gray. And this is a subservient group to the Draco that they've conquered a lot of other reptilian type races and co-opted them, but they've also done a lot of genetic engineering.
How trusting is this guy, David Wilcock, to just randomly drink a glass of water that somebody hands him on stage at this conference? He's brave. What do you think about the mouth being open the way that looks? Is that at all accurate?
The teeth they're needle sharp.
Really?
Yeah.
So even sharper than that?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, and what you have shared with us is that the Germans actually were the first ones in modern times to make contact with this particular group, and that has evolved into something that we call the Dark Fleet.
Yes, and William Tompkins has released a lot of other information that corroborates what I've stated. And yeah, the Nazis started working with the reptilians, and this developed into Dark Fleet. And
one of the weird things that happened was that I had a dream, quote unquote, in which I had been taken to a lunar base. And I was describing to him the uniform that people were wearing on this base that I got taken to. And then you sent me this art like the same day. And I'm like, oh my God, that's them.
Yeah, that's one of the Dark Fleet uniforms.
So do you think, given how weird that was, and we never really talked about it on Cosmic Disclosure, and I don't know if I even mentioned it on my website, are there people that could actually be interacting with folks like the Dark Fleet and have it totally wiped out of their mind and they're not even aware that it happened?
That's standard operating procedure.
Really?
Yes, if you have contact with one of them, they're going to they're not only going to wipe your memory, but they're going to give you a series of screen memories that you're going to have to work through.
Right. How widespread do you think this kind of contact with people on Earth is?
Much wider than you would believe. And the people that have probably been picked up most are the ones that are viciously skeptical. They seem triggered if you bring up any of this, that most likely they've had a lot of interaction that they're programmed to have a visceral reaction to.
So when most people think about the so-called alien abduction scenario, we have a lot of really great ufologists out there, and I don't want to dismiss their work. The typical idea is, you're going to have scoop marks. You're going to have 4 hours of missing time. You wake up in bed and there's dirt on your feet. This kind of stuff doesn't sound like that to me. What's going on?
Well, no, often, and it depends on who or what you're picked up by, what your experience is going to be. What normally happens if you get picked up by a non-terrestrial, you go, no matter what the experience is, when they bring you back home, one of these military space program groups, they will come and re-abduct you and then interrogate you to get intelligence about what your interaction was about with the non-terrestrials. Then you get another mind wipe and more screen memories. So you have what the non-terrestrials did and then what the rehab agents did. And it's usually the rehab agents' mind control and screen memories that cause the most problems for experiencers.
Now, based on what you've told me personally from the cosmic beings that we're about to get into here, and we're going to see some great images of them, they said to you through me, and I feel like I'm kind of the guinea pig or the canary in the coal mine for everybody else right now, that if I do enough work, that I would be able to remember more of these things that actually happen, but you got to break through this sort of electrochemical barrier that is created in your mind. So how is there going to be changes in the physics of the Earth or changes in consciousness that will allow people to start remembering this and that the mind control won't work anymore?
Well, obviously the mind control is not working the way it used to. The reptilians, or not just the reptilians, but the group that they're a part of, this conglomerate, for over 6,000 years, they've had technology in orbit that controls our behavior the way they want. They can agitate us, they can give us fear, they can give us direct information. And that technology, since these energetic waves have started, the beginning of this ascension, if we want to call it that, ever since the energies really started picking up, that their technology is not working as well. They've had to basically turn it up all the way to max. And that is causing further problems. We're beginning to see a lot of people that are starting to behave very strangely, very triggered. And it's not just the election. It's everybody is having these issues, and it has to do with the energetic changes that we're trying to acclimate to.
All right, so that is a very freaking creepy thing for us to have talked about. But one of the things that's going to happen, if you say that you want full disclosure, okay, then we need to show whoever is going to be watching this, which could be a large audience and very high-level audience based on the intel we're getting, we need to show them that this can be discussed, and there's no panic. Well, somebody just left, actually, but I think that's because they had to go to the bathroom. Nobody's panicking. Nobody's running out of the room. They're not, like, ripping you apart and ripping organs out of your body when they do this, right? It's not like some torture thing.
No, but if we do get...
But. He says the but. Oh, that's great.
If we do get what all of us are wanting, full disclosure, it's not going to... I've stated before, we're not all going to be standing around holding hands singing Kumbaya. It's going to be the most traumatic experience that society has ever had. But just remember, all evolution happens through stress, and it's something that is needed. We're ready for it. We need it, and we don't need to be treated like children anymore and just given tiny bits of information over decades.
Amen. He drops the mic. Boom. So you've all probably heard this if you've ever really paid any attention to what we've done, but it broke down into 5 factions. The first faction, as Corey has explained, I'm just going to blast through this really quick. Solar Warden. That was the one. Now, why do they call it a warden? What was the objective here?
The objective was to police the solar system because for many years we had zero control over who came and went. So we set up basically a grid, and they have basically air traffic control out in space. So any intruder that comes in, they immediately have to give a friend or foe signal. If they don't have that, then they need to respond to hails. If that doesn't happen, these guys go in and run them away if they can.
And I want to point out that we now have had the whistleblower, William Tompkins, delineate that he was working on the original prototypes of these cigar-shaped craft that actually became the Solar Warden craft that you said you ended up working on.
Right, and when Gaia was out to interview him, Jay Widener showed him some of the images of the craft, and he was blown away.
Yeah. And we also have the UFO hacker, Gary McKinnon, who saw this code name inside the hack when he went into NASA computers, with a list of non-terrestrial officers, no less. So it's a very interesting story. Second faction is what we're now calling the ICC, or Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. Now, how did this evolve? We actually had a very interesting Gaia episode. If you haven't subscribed to Gaia, you really should. It's $10 a month. It's totally awesome. Give a big hand if you're already a Gaia subscriber. Oh, man. Why am I selling you? Forget about it.
Yeah. If not, go to blueavians.com.
That's true.
And you can watch some free episodes and then sign up there.
And then we get credit for that when you do it through that, which is important.
We actually make some money.
We actually make money that way. So Tompkins, in one of those episodes that we shot with him, said that, well, the people had to make some money. And so sure enough, it started out as just a protective thing, but then these defense contractors get involved. And what are they doing that makes money, Corey?
Well,
or the equivalent of money thereof?
Yeah, they don't use money. It's the barter system. And the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, they're the ones that are coordinating a lot of the trade, whether it be biologicals, to put it nicely, or technology, even art. Some of the missing art from World War II is most likely hanging on a wall in another solar system. So there's a huge commerce system out there, and we're dealing with over 900 different races, and they're coming to us to produce technologies. We've gotten so good at it.
And one of the insiders that I have is a guy who has claimed to have handled 1,300 different types of extraterrestrial bodies. And we found out that he was working in one of about 70 or 80 different rooms just in his little wing, of which there were 4 wings per floor, of which the base had I think it was 84 floors or something like this. So there's an enormous amount of these coming around, these bodies that are showing up that people are autopsying and taking a look at. And so we may get some new testimony about that very soon.
Yeah, one of the biggest things to trade are biologicals, genetic material.
Why do they want that? What's the objective in getting these bodies?
Well, they want to understand the anatomy and how different anatomies develop in different environments. But also, they are looking for a way to exploit genetics and to exploit different parts of the body that may produce medicines or other things for us that we can use. You okay?
Well,
I didn't know if you're having a little tick.
No, we're fine. We're fine. Okay, so this, what are they actually making that people want to trade for? What's the ultimate product that's being exported by the ICC?
various different types of spacecraft or components that can be integrated into the non-terrestrial group spacecraft. And a lot of those are bio-neuro interface type technologies.
Moving right along at a deadly pace. GGLN, Global Galactic League of Nations. This kind of seemed like it was a bone that they threw to the leaders of the world so they don't get too angry about all the other stuff going on. What could you give us as a brief summary of the GGLN here?
The GGLN was set up after a lot of the different nations started to find out about the secret space program, or part of the secret space program, and they were threatening to make it public. So what the powers that be did is they created an entirely different space program that was set up. It's all about developing new technologies and exploration. So, and this group operates almost completely outside of the solar system as well. That was part of the deal. They did not want them seeing what was going on here, or, they didn't want any crossover.
And you got to visit their base at one point, right?
One of their bases, yes, yeah.
And you said people had flags on their uniforms?
It was very similar to Stargate Atlantis. There were people walking around with different, I remember seeing there were several Eastern European nation flags. And these people were walking around just like on Stargate Atlantis. They were relaxed. They were, some of them were going outside of where I arrived. There was a kind of a glowing pool, and they were having R&R. They were going in and dipping into the pool, and they seemed very well-adjusted and happy.
But they don't know about things like the ICC, right? They're not aware that there's a business going on.
So they're aware that there's a control structure, but they're not privy to all the details. Yeah.
Okay. Then we have a military faction, and what are they doing, and how does it plug in with the other factions we've seen?
Well, part of that is the military-industrial complex, SSP.
Okay.
And there are a number of a lot of people really don't understand the difference between the Air Force and the programs that they have going on, which I had been calling the Lower Secret Space Program, which David has now changed to the MIC, Military Industrial Complex.
We don't want to call somebody lower. That's not going to really curry favor.
But, it is lower technology. It is not they have space stations that are maybe 50, 100 years ahead of the International Space Station. They rotate, create like 1/3 gravity. They're made out of repurposed fuselages and stages of rockets that were used to launch other payloads up. So it's not a super high-tech secret space program, although they've been briefed and told that they're at the top of the pyramid and there's nothing above them. And
we got
it's
a
the same
niche
with all of them.
We're going to talk a little bit about more on them because they've become one of the alliance groups. And then we have the Dark Fleet, which we already got into.
Actually, the alliance is made up of people that have broken away from all these groups.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have scout groups, which was another insider told us that there's some smaller things that are done that are not really part of these other four, but they are five.
Right, there are all types of off-the-books type programs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that Corey found out in the course of his work, and remember, he's truly unique in the sense of being a whistleblower who actually was out there in a spaceship and managed to come back to Earth, recover his memories, and come forward as an insider. And he validated what so many other people had told me. And so he's actually out there flying around and remembered everything. And one of the things you said, Corey, is that these different space programs, they already have over 100 colonies in our solar system. And we have some art coming up in a minute, but what are some of these colonies like? What are we seeing?
Well, the ones that are owned by the ICC, they are very sprawling. They have everything. They have areas to where they take raw materials, smelt them, break them down, create the raw materials to be put into whatever they're building or manufacturing. Then they have manufacturing plants. They have the actual the part of the colony where everyone resides. It's just imagine any type of industrial program down here, it's pretty much mirrored up there.
And we got some great art coming up, and I don't want to run too far out on that. So, as he just said, there's mining facilities, and they have the living quarters fairly nearby. And you said that there's these truck kind of ships that they use sometimes to move?
Yeah, these are for mining mostly.
Right.
Very large, look like giant containers that you would see on a ship. But they look kind of like big rigs, strangely enough.
But without wheels, yeah.
Yeah, without wheels. But yeah, those I've seen those several times, and they're usually transferring things back and forth from the mining operations.
And so the mining could be occurring on any number of moons or asteroids in our solar system.
Correct. It's happening on almost all of them because they all have unique properties.
Interesting. All right, so we also know that there are multiple gigantic manufacturing plants just on the planet Mars alone.
There's one less now.
This one, yeah, after the Mars atrocity. So given that we showed people earlier in this talk the face on Mars, the pyramids on Mars, that stuff's obviously really old. Total Recall, very strange movie, right? They go in, and if you miss it, you don't see that at the end when Arnold puts his hand into this thing, and all the cores go into the ice and melt that ice to create atmosphere for Mars, all the water comes shooting up out of a pyramid. So, what do you think? Why? There's a couple questions I have, but first of all, if those pyramids are still there and Viking photographed them, have we gone back inside? Have we seen what's in there? Can we use it? What's going on with the face on Mars, the pyramids?
Well, most of what is on Mars is completely destroyed. You'll see. I mean, it looks like what is it? Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu
the
or
place where all the-
Pumapunku.
Pumapunku,
Yeah.
where all the stones are just strewn about.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll see like a corner of a block sticking up, and it'll look like a pyramid. It's destroyed. It's all
So
destroyed.
there's really nothing to go in and look at when you go in there.
Well, whatever has been, they have people that come, or not people, but non-terrestrials usually that come and pick through all of that and take what is useful. But yeah, we've found some things that we've removed from these locations.
So you can imagine now, I mean, it's got to be frustrating. It's frustrating for me, right? Hearing all this stuff and going, why the F are we not being allowed to see all this great stuff? Why are we being kept in the dark down here? You saw the stuff on Mars. You really think that that's a trick of light and shadow? You really think that those towers on the moon were just because, oh, well, yeah, the camera screwed up? No, this stuff is real. And that's why I wanted to start with some really hard data, because Corey is not alone. We've been hoping that new insiders were going to come forward to corroborate this. We've got people that are starting to want to come forward now. We're getting more testimony, and it all crosses together. There's no way that all these people could be lying about this with all the data in the Law of One and all the provable things that we know. And so this is a really rare and amazing opportunity for us to learn about something that is so much beyond, and I don't want to insult anybody, but you all know, if you've been to UFO conferences maybe even as little as 5 years ago, Roswell again? You know, right, the saucer, look, it's metallic. Oh my God. Come on, we're done with that. We got to actually figure out why are there so many different types of UFOs? Why do they all look different? And what Corey's revealing to us is, he said, if you didn't catch that, it's very important. Our people in the military-industrial complex space program, the greater one, of course, which is not really the military-industrial complex anymore, it's like a breakaway group, they're working with 900 different civilizations, and that's, as they told you, right, that's the ones that they're really trading with the most. And
Yes,
there are others as well, right?
They were actively trading with over 900 non-terrestrial groups.
But then there's other groups that are kind of sometimes trading with them as well, right?
Yeah, they're sort of like nomadic almost groups, and they make it around to our area, then we trade.
So this was the first of the images that Corey came up with. This is a line art illustration of the original concept art for his new graphic novel, which is now this. And this is a big new thing. So Corey, what do you want to say about the Sphere Being Alliance?
I was approached by Tier Air, and he stated that we're doing really good work, but when it comes down to it, we're preaching to the choir. We need to reach outside of the esoteric community, if you want to call it that, and begin to plant seeds of this information into other communities. You know, the sci-fi community, the graphic novel community, all of these people, they have a lot of crossover with this community. Their minds are primed for the seed to be, they have fertile minds ready for the seed to be planted. And from the beginning, Tier Air told me it doesn't matter, or when I would tell him, no one's going to believe me, and he would tell me it's of no consequence. And I would shake my head. It's a little bit of a consequence to me. But, you know, and the fact that we've done all these episodes of Cosmic Disclosure to back up my information, and people are wondering why now I'm sharing it in a sci-fi sort of format. And it is to spread this information, especially the Blue Avian message, to the masses as much as possible.
All right. So, given that we were talking about your experience with the ICC and the 900 groups, this is one of a series of slides we put together from what you got that actually shows how you got there. So, what are we looking at here? What was this?
This is a rendition of the craft that we arrived in. It
Arrived where?
To the Mars facility.
Okay.
So it looked a little bit different than that, but that's the one where I described being taken with Gonzalez and one of the ICC bigwigs, and we went to a Mars facility to do an inspection. And the inspection was for them to prove to us that they weren't using slave labor, but they wanted to take us to several bases that were known about, and we had intel about a base that we weren't supposed to know about, and we asked to go there, and we verified that slave labor was being used.
And that's what we have here. So this is you sitting inside the ship, correct? And
Yes.
looking at a map of Mars?
Yes, it's like a big screen smart glass pad.
And I remember you telling me that the ICC representative who's trying to come up clean with your Secret Space Program Alliance folks, who now seem to have the upper hand, thanks to the Blue Avians, which we'll get into that in a minute, they said, hey, yeah, just go to any one of these bases on this map. And then what did Gonzalez end up saying?
All of a sudden, new points on the map started showing up, and he said, we want to go there. And it turned out that one of the defectors from one of the secret space programs that joined the SSP Alliance was from there. Now, what I hadn't told about that situation in the past, if people remember, we were going to bring back a family with us for them to be interviewed. This family was this guy's family, this defector's family.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That I did not know. Okay, now this looks very cool, very interesting. Is this, what are we seeing now?
This is a rendition of how I described, and we flew down into, it looked like almost an ancient river system, curving sort of, I guess, mountains. And then we flew right in to an opening in a mountain that is somewhat similar to this. And then that's when we landed our craft and were escorted into the facility where we began our tour.
And don't forget that as we're live streaming this, all of this video feed is going directly into the live stream computer. So you're going to see versions of these slides on the live stream that you can order that are going to look a lot better than what we're seeing on the screen here. So just bear that in mind. Okay, now here, this is more like some line art. What is there any difference? That kind of on the left there looks like the same as the other one.
Yes. The one on the left is closest, but there is also what we don't have depicted, a tower that rose in and out, almost like a piston that would push out, and it was like an air traffic control tower.
Right. And so I remember you telling this on the show that like when you flew close, this thing kind of popped up and allowed you to get in.
Well, it
Or
popped
it would-
up as we were approaching,
Right.
and then I assume that it went all the way back down after we went in the port below it.
Okay. So now finally at 9:25, we're going to get into the 5 factions, which is what you supposedly came here for. But you see how much setup it took to get there. And this is all very valuable stuff. So this is where things get really interesting. We're going to start with the one that Corey got introduced to first. As you've heard his story before, I'm sure all of you have. If not, go watch Cosmic Disclosure. We have a nice